Hello, my dear students. How are you today? I hope you're ready because I have a very special story to share with you. Have you ever felt like learning English is too hard, takes too long, or is simply impossible? Maybe you've tried to improve, but it feels like no matter what you do, it's not enough. Well, today I want to change the way you think about learning English. I want to tell you a story about someone who achieved something incredible. This person was just like you. They struggled with English. They felt nervous when speaking, confused when listening, and frustrated when they couldn't find the right words. They thought, maybe English is just not for me. But everything changed when they discovered a secret plan. Now, I know what you might be thinking. A secret plan? That sounds too good to be true. But trust me, this is a real story, and this plan is something you can follow too. Imagine this. In just 30 days, this person went from being afraid to speak English to feeling confident and fluent. Yes, only 30 days. Think about what that could mean for you. What would it feel like to speak English with confidence, understand others easily, and express yourself clearly? Wouldn't that be amazing? The best part is, this person didn't do anything complicated. They didn't spend hours and hours studying grammar rules or memorizing difficult words. They didn't need expensive courses or a private tutor. All they had was a simple plan, and they followed it every single day. Now here's where it gets exciting. In this story, I'm not just going to tell you what they did. I'm going to share their exact steps, the same steps you can take to improve your English in just 30 days. Imagine this. 1 month from now, you could be speaking English with confidence. You could be surprising your friends, family, and even yourself. So why am I sharing this story with you? Because I believe in you. I know that you can do this. I know that with the right plan and some effort, you can achieve your English goals faster than you ever thought possible. But let me ask you a question first. Are you ready to make a change? Are you ready to learn the secrets that no one else is talking about? If your answer is yes, then this story is for you. Sit back, relax, and listen carefully. Because by the end of this story, you'll not only know how to improve your English in 30 days, but you'll also feel inspired to start your own journey today. So let's begin the story of how one person mastered English in just 1 month. Are you ready? Let's get started. Let me take you back to the beginning of my journey. For as long as I can remember, I've wanted to speak English fluently. I had this vision of myself talking confidently in English with people from all over the world. I imagined myself traveling to new places, meeting people, and making new friends, all without feeling nervous or confused about what to say. I even dreamed of watching English movies without subtitles and reading books in their original language. But the reality? It was nothing like that. Every time I tried to speak English, I felt stuck. I'd open my mouth and my mind would suddenly go blank. I couldn't remember the right words, and when I did, they came out all wrong. My grammar was a mess, my sentences didn't make sense, and my pronunciation? Let's just say it wasn't great. I can still remember the frustration. I'd sit down with my English books and try to memorize vocabulary lists, but the words didn't stick. I'd try to practice grammar, but there were so many rules and exceptions that I felt completely lost. And listening? Forget about it. I couldn't understand a single word when native speakers talked. It felt like they were speaking at lightning speed. There were moments when I felt so defeated. I started to believe that maybe learning English wasn't for me. I thought, maybe I'm not smart enough. Maybe I'm too old to learn a new language. Maybe I'll never be good at this. Have you ever felt that way? It's not a good feeling. Every time I tried to practice, I worried about making mistakes. I worried about what people would think of me. Would they laugh at my accent? Would they get annoyed because I couldn't express myself clearly? These thoughts made me so nervous that I avoided speaking English altogether. I'd hear people say, the best way to learn is to practice speaking, But how could I practice when I felt so scared? And it wasn't just speaking that was hard. Listening was a challenge too. I'd try to watch English videos or listen to podcasts, but I couldn't understand much. I'd catch a word here and there, but by the time I figured out what it meant, the speaker had already moved on to the next sentence. It was like trying to catch water with my hands. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't hold on to anything. The worst part was feeling stuck. I wanted to improve, but I didn't know where to start. Should I focus on vocabulary? Should I spend more time on grammar? Should I try to learn with apps, videos, or books? There were so many options, and it was overwhelming. Because of this, I kept putting it off. I'd tell myself, I'll start tomorrow, but tomorrow would come, and I'd find another excuse. Then one day, something happened that changed everything. I'll never forget it. I was sitting in a park, and a tourist came up to me. They smiled and said, "Excuse me, could you help me find the train station?" Their English was clear and simple, but I froze. I wanted to help, but I couldn't think of the words. My brain was screaming, "You know this. You've studied this before." But nothing came out. I just stood there feeling embarrassed until the tourist gave up and walked away. That moment was like a wake-up call. I realized that if I didn't take action, nothing would change. I couldn't keep waiting for the perfect time to start learning. I couldn't keep making excuses or avoiding English because of my fear. I had to do something, and I had to do it now. So, I made a decision. I told myself, enough is enough. I'm going to learn English, and I'm going to do it in 30 days. It wasn't an easy decision, and honestly, I wasn't sure if it was possible. But I knew one thing for sure. If I didn't start now, I'd regret it later. I didn't have any magic power. I didn't have a private teacher, expensive courses, or a lot of free time. I was just like you, someone who wanted to improve but felt unsure about where to start. But I knew I had to try. The first thing I did was sit down and create a plan. I knew I couldn't learn everything at once, so I focused on the basics. I decided to work on 3 things every day: vocabulary, listening, and speaking. I didn't worry about being perfect. My goal was simple: improve a little bit every day. At first, I felt nervous. I wondered if I was wasting my time or if I'd give up halfway. But then I thought about my dream of speaking English fluently. I thought about all the things I wanted to do: traveling, meeting people, watching movies, reading books. And I realized that the only thing standing between me and my dream was my fear. So I pushed the fear aside and started my journey. Let me tell you, the first few days weren't easy. I made mistakes. I stumbled over words. I felt embarrassed when I couldn't pronounce something correctly. But I reminded myself that mistakes are part of learning. Every mistake was a step forward, a chance to improve. And you know what? As the days went by, something amazing started to happen. The words I practiced began to stick. I started to recognize phrases when I listened to English videos. I even started to feel more confident when I spoke. Little by little, I could see progress, and that progress motivated me to keep going. Looking back, I'm so glad I made that decision. It wasn't easy, but it was worth it. In just 30 days, I went from feeling stuck and frustrated to feeling confident and proud of my progress. And the best part, if I can do it, so can you. So, my friend, if you're feeling the same way I did, frustrated, nervous, unsure of where to start, I want you to know that it's never too late to begin. Take it one step at a time, and don't be afraid to make mistakes. Remember, every step you take brings you closer to your goal. You can do this, and I'll be here to guide you every step of the way. Let's start this journey together. There was a moment when I realized something crucial, something that completely changed the way I approached learning English. You see, up until then, I had been trying to learn everything at once. I thought I needed to master every rule of grammar, memorize a long list of vocabulary words, and understand every English accent in the world. I felt overwhelmed, and because of this, I kept putting it off. Every day I thought, I'll get to it tomorrow, but tomorrow never seemed to come. But then everything changed. One day I sat down and really thought about why I was struggling so much. What was the problem? I wasn't lazy. I wasn't unmotivated. I just didn't have a clear plan. I had been trying to do everything all at once, expecting to get fluent overnight, and that simply wasn't possible. I realized that if I wanted to make real progress, I needed to start small, focus on the essentials, and do something every day, no matter how small. This was the turning point in my learning journey. I understood that learning English didn't have to be complicated or overwhelming. I didn't need to know everything at once. Instead, I needed to break it down into manageable, achievable steps. So I made a promise to myself. I decided that every single day, no matter what, I would do three things. 1. Learn 10 new words. 2. Practice speaking. 3. Listen to English. These were my 3 daily tasks. I didn't worry about anything else. I didn't try to learn grammar rules or memorize complex sentences right away. I just focused on these 3 things, and I committed to doing them every day. It wasn't about doing everything perfectly, it was about consistency. I understood that if I could just make progress every day, no matter how small, in 30 days, I'd see a huge difference. Let me explain why I chose these 3 things. 1. Learn 10 new words. Learning vocabulary is a fundamental part of learning any language. But instead of overwhelming myself with huge lists of words, I decided to keep it simple. I would learn 10 new words each day. At first, it wasn't about fancy words or difficult ones. I started with the basics, the words I would use in everyday conversations. Words like hello, goodbye, please, thank you, where, when, how, and why. These words are small, but they are incredibly important. I wanted to be able to start simple conversations, and I knew that vocabulary was the key. As the days went by, I started to learn more than just the basic words. I began to learn adjectives to describe things, verbs to express actions, and nouns to talk about people, places, and things. I found that by sticking to a small, manageable number of words every day, I was able to steadily build a solid foundation of vocabulary. And because I wasn't trying to learn a huge number of words all at once, I was actually able to remember and use them in real conversations. The more I learned, the more confident I became. 2. Practice speaking. At first, speaking was the most terrifying part. I worried about making mistakes, about sounding silly, about not being understood. But I knew that if I wanted to become fluent, I had to face this fear. I promised myself that every day I would speak in English, even if it was just for a few minutes. I started by speaking to myself. Yes, I know it sounds a little strange, but I would look in the mirror and talk about my day in English. I would describe what I had for breakfast, what I was planning to do, or what I saw on my walk. The more I did this, the more natural it started to feel. I realized that speaking English didn't have to be perfect. It just had to happen. Then I moved on to speaking with others. I looked for language partners online, people who were also learning English or native speakers who were willing to practice with me. At first it was awkward. I made mistakes. I didn't know how to say certain things. But every time I spoke, I learned something new. I became less afraid of making mistakes because I realized that mistakes were part of the process. Every time I made a mistake, I learned something important. And every time I spoke, I grew a little bit more confident. 3. Listen to English. Listening was another area where I had been struggling. I would try to watch movies or listen to podcasts, but it felt like I couldn't understand anything. The words were too fast and the accents were too different from what I was used to. But I knew that listening was one of the most important skills in learning a language, so I decided to make it a daily habit. I started by listening to simple English stories, like the ones you're hearing now. These were easy to understand, and they helped me get used to the sound of the language. I listened to them every day, repeating parts that I didn't understand. I also listened to English songs, podcasts, and YouTube videos on topics that interested me. At first, I could only catch a few words here and there, but little by little, I began to understand more. The more I listened, the more my ear tuned into the language. I started to recognize patterns, get used to common phrases, and understand the rhythm of English. Listening became one of my favorite parts of learning because it helped me connect with real, natural English. It helped me understand how native speakers use the language in everyday situations. By sticking to these three things every day, I started to see results. Sure, it wasn't perfect at first. There were days when I felt like I wasn't making progress, and there were days when I made mistakes and felt frustrated, but I kept going. I remembered my promise to myself, and I focused on consistency, not perfection. And you know what happened. After just 1 week, I started to feel more confident. My vocabulary was growing, and I was using the new words in conversations. I could feel my speaking improving because I was practicing every day, and I didn't have to wait for someone else to talk to me. I was speaking to myself and getting used to using English in real situations. After 2 weeks, I could understand more when I listened to English. My ear was getting used to the sounds and I could follow conversations better. I felt like I was becoming a part of the English-speaking world, even though I wasn't speaking to native speakers all the time. By the end of the 30 days, I had made progress I never thought possible. My vocabulary was bigger, my speaking was smoother, and I could understand English much better. I felt proud of what I had accomplished, and I realized that the key wasn't to try to learn everything at once. It was to take small steps every day. That was the turning point for me. It wasn't about trying to learn everything or expecting to be perfect. It was about taking small, consistent actions every single day. And I promise you, if you follow this simple plan, you'll see big results too. It's not about doing everything at once. It's about doing something every day. So what are you waiting for? Let's take the first step together. Now let me share with you the details of the plan I followed to improve my English in just 30 days. It wasn't anything complicated or magical, but rather a consistent and focused approach. I broke down my learning process into 4 weeks, and each week had a clear goal. The key was to stay committed, take small steps, and build on each day's progress. Let's go through each week so you can see exactly what I did. Week 1. Focusing on vocabulary. The first week was all about building a strong foundation. Vocabulary. I knew that without a solid vocabulary, I wouldn't be able to express myself clearly in English, so I focused on learning 10 new words every single day. I didn't try to memorize long lists of random words. Instead, I chose words that I would actually use in real-life situations. I started with the basics. These were the words that form the core of any conversation in English. Words like hello, please, thank you, sorry, where, when, how, good morning, good night, and goodbye. These are the words that I knew I would use every day, no matter where I was. I wrote them down one by one, and then I practiced saying them out loud, paying close attention to their pronunciation. I didn't want to just know the meaning of the word. I wanted to make sure I could pronounce it clearly and use it in a sentence. For example, with the word hello, I would practice saying it in different situations, like when meeting someone for the first time or when answering the phone. Hello, my name is John. Hello, how are you today? I would repeat these sentences to myself until I felt comfortable using them. Every day I did this exercise with 10 new words, but I didn't stop there. I made sure to use the words I had learned in simple sentences. I created flashcards with the word on one side and a sentence on the other. Whenever I had a free moment, I would go over these flashcards and test myself. For instance, after learning the word please, I would make sure to use it in sentences like, "Could you please help me?" or "Please pass me the salt." This made the new words stick in my memory because I wasn't just memorizing them in isolation. I was using them in practical, real-world situations. I also made it a habit to say the sentences aloud so I could practice speaking and get comfortable with the flow of the language. By the end of the first week, I had learned and practiced 70 new words, and more importantly, I felt confident using them in simple conversations. I could introduce myself, ask basic questions, and express simple requests. It was an exciting feeling to know that I was already making progress. Week 2. Focusing on listening. In the second week, I shifted my focus to listening. Listening is an essential part of learning any language because it helps you understand how the language sounds, how sentences are structured, and how words are connected. I knew that if I could understand what people were saying in English, it would make speaking and reading much easier. I started by listening to simple English stories, just like the one you're hearing now. These stories were short, clear, and easy to follow, which helped me gradually get used to the rhythm of the language. I chose stories that were specifically designed for English learners, so the vocabulary wasn't too complicated, and the pace was slow enough for me to catch most of the words. I didn't just listen passively, though. I made sure to actively engage with the audio. When I listened to a story, I would stop after every sentence or two, repeat what I had just heard, and try to copy the pronunciation as closely as I could. This repetition helped me improve my pronunciation, and by trying to mimic the intonation and rhythm of the speaker, I started to sound more natural when I spoke. If I didn't understand something, I would go back and listen again. I didn't get discouraged. Instead, I used it as an opportunity to learn. Sometimes I would write down words or phrases I didn't know and look them up later. Other times, I would replay a section of the story several times until I felt comfortable with it. At the end of the second week, I felt a lot more confident in my ability to understand spoken English. I could follow the general meaning of stories and conversations, even if I didn't understand every single word. My listening skills had improved, and I felt ready to take the next step. Speaking. Week 3. Focusing on speaking. By the third week, I knew it was time to start speaking. Speaking had always been my biggest challenge because I was afraid of making mistakes. But I realized that the only way to improve my speaking skills was to actually speak. So I made a commitment to speak English every single day, even if it was just for a few minutes. I started by speaking to myself in front of a mirror. I know this might sound strange, but it was incredibly helpful. Speaking in front of the mirror allowed me to practice speaking out loud without the fear of making mistakes in front of someone else. I would describe my day, talk about what I was doing, and even ask myself questions in English. What did I have for breakfast today? What time is it now? What do I want to do this weekend? This simple exercise helped me build confidence and get comfortable with the act of speaking English. I didn't worry about perfect grammar or pronunciation at this stage. I just focused on expressing myself. I tried to speak slowly and clearly, and I paid attention to my intonation, so I sounded more natural. Then I decided to take it to the next level. I joined an online language exchange platform and found a language partner. This was a huge step for me because now I was actually speaking to someone else. The first conversation was nerve-wracking, to say the least. I was so scared that I would make a mistake or not be able to understand my partner. But to my surprise, my partner was patient and encouraging. We started with simple topics, introducing ourselves, talking about hobbies, and discussing our countries. Yes, I made mistakes. Yes, I stumbled over words. But that's okay. Every mistake was a learning opportunity, and I learned more in those 20-minute conversations than I had in an entire week of reading grammar books. I started to feel more comfortable speaking English, and I realized that I didn't have to be perfect. I just had to keep practicing. By the end of the third week, I was speaking every day. Sometimes it was with my language partner. Sometimes it was just with myself in front of the mirror, but I was speaking regularly. I felt more confident, and I could see real progress in my ability to express myself. Week 4, watching TV shows and learning phrases. In the final week, I decided to challenge myself even further. I wanted to practice English in real-life situations, so I began watching my favorite English TV shows with subtitles. Watching TV shows in English was both fun and educational because it allowed me to hear natural conversations and see how the language is used in everyday situations. It also exposed me to different accents, idioms, and expressions that I wouldn't have learned from textbooks. I started with shows that I already enjoyed, so it didn't feel like a chore. I would watch an episode and pause it every time I heard a sentence or phrase that I didn't understand. Then I would repeat the sentence aloud, trying to copy the pronunciation as closely as possible. Sometimes I would even rewind and listen to the same sentence 2 or 3 times until I felt comfortable with it. After watching each episode, I would write down new words and phrases I had learned. For example, I might learn a phrase like, "What's going on?" or "How's everything going?" These are common expressions in everyday English that you don't always find in textbooks, but they're essential for sounding natural when speaking. I also paid attention to the body language and tone of the speakers. This helped me understand how to use these phrases in the right context. For example, if someone says, "What's up?" with a smile, it's a friendly greeting. But if they say it in a serious tone, it could mean something's wrong. By the end of the fourth week, I felt like a completely different person. I could understand English much better, and I was speaking more confidently. I was no longer afraid of making mistakes, and I had developed a habit of using English every day. The 30-day challenge had worked, and that, my friends, was my 30-day plan. By focusing on small daily steps, learning vocabulary, listening to stories, speaking regularly, and watching TV shows, I was able to improve my English in a way that felt natural and achievable. The key was consistency. I didn't try to learn everything at once. I took it one day at a time, and that made all the difference. After 30 days of hard work, dedication, and consistent practice, something truly amazing happened. I could speak English confidently. Not only that, but I could also understand people when they spoke to me in English. I had gone from someone who was terrified of making mistakes and afraid to speak in public to someone who was eager to have conversations in English. It felt incredible, like I had unlocked a whole new world. But what was even more remarkable was the fact that I hadn't spent hours every day practicing. In fact, I had only practiced for about 30 minutes a day. That's right, just 30 minutes. And yet the progress I made in that time was nothing short of amazing. Let me tell you exactly how it happened. A new confidence in speaking. Before I started this journey, speaking in English felt like a huge challenge. Whenever I had to speak, I'd stumble over my words, worry about my accent, and think about all the grammar rules I was probably messing up. I would freeze, unsure of what to say next. Even though I had learned a lot of vocabulary, I didn't feel ready to speak because I feared I would sound silly or that people wouldn't understand me. But after just 30 days of consistent practice, I noticed a big change. I was no longer afraid to speak. I could introduce myself, ask questions, and share simple thoughts without hesitation. I had learned how to say everyday things in English, and it felt natural. I started to feel like English was becoming a part of who I was. I remember one particular moment that made me realize how much I had changed. I was at a cafe with a friend, and the waiter came over to take our order. In the past, I would have nervously looked at my friend and asked them to order for me in English. But that day, I ordered my food confidently in English. I even made a little joke with the waiter, and to my surprise, they laughed. It was such a small moment, but it was so powerful. I felt proud of myself because I could communicate without feeling nervous or self-conscious. Understanding others. More clearly, one of the most significant changes I noticed after 30 days was how much more I understood when people spoke to me in English. In the beginning, I would struggle to catch even the simplest words or phrases. Everything sounded too fast, and I couldn't keep up with conversations. I would have to ask people to repeat themselves over and over again, and it felt discouraging. But by the end of the 30 days, I could follow conversations much more easily. I could understand most of what people were saying, even when they spoke quickly. The listening exercises I had done with stories, podcasts, and TV shows had paid off. I started to recognize patterns in the language, pick up on key words, and understand the context of what was being said. It was like a light bulb went off in my head, and suddenly I could connect the words and phrases I had learned to real-life conversations. For example, when I watched English TV shows or movies, I no longer had to rely on subtitles to understand what was happening. Sure, I didn't understand every single word, but I could catch the important parts and understand the main idea of the conversation. This was a huge improvement from where I had started, and it gave me so much confidence. I could now have conversations with native speakers, ask for directions, order food, and talk about my day without feeling lost or confused. The importance of consistency. So what was the secret to all of this? Was it spending hours every day studying grammar books or memorizing vocabulary lists? No, the real secret was consistency. I didn't need to spend hours each day studying. I only practiced for 30 minutes a day. That's it. But I made sure that I practiced every single day without fail. In the past, I would often skip study sessions because I thought I didn't have enough time to make a difference. But by sticking to my 30-minute daily routine, I learned that small, consistent actions add up over time. It's not about cramming in a lot of hours or pushing yourself to exhaustion. It's about steady, focused practice. Every day I did the three things I had promised myself: learning 10 new words, practicing speaking, and listening to English. I didn't have to overwhelm myself with too many tasks, and I didn't have to study for hours. The key was to do something every day, no matter how small. The consistency of doing a little bit every day built up my skills slowly but surely. I can't stress this enough. The secret is focus and consistency. If you can dedicate just 30 minutes a day to learning English, you'll start to see incredible results. You don't have to be perfect, and you don't need to rush. Just keep showing up and putting in the effort, and the progress will come. Gaining confidence with mistakes. Another important thing I learned during these 30 days was that making mistakes is completely okay. In fact, mistakes are an essential part of the learning process. Early on, I was afraid of making mistakes, especially when speaking. I thought people would judge me or think I wasn't good enough. But over time, I realized that mistakes weren't something to fear. They were opportunities to learn. I made plenty of mistakes during my 30-day journey. I mixed up words, mispronounced phrases, and sometimes got the grammar wrong. But instead of getting discouraged, I embraced these mistakes. Every time I made an error, I learned something new. I would ask for feedback from my language partner or look up the correct form of a word or phrase. This mindset helped me improve quickly, and it took away the pressure of being perfect. By the end of the 30 days, I was more comfortable making mistakes. I realized that mistakes didn't define my ability to speak English. They were just part of the learning journey. So don't be afraid to make mistakes. Embrace them as stepping stones to fluency. Feeling proud of myself. Looking back on my 30-day journey, I felt an overwhelming sense of pride. I had gone from someone who was afraid to speak English to someone who could have conversations, understand others, and even enjoy watching TV shows and movies in English. I was so proud of myself for sticking with the plan and not giving up. But what made me even prouder was knowing that I had done it on my own. I hadn't relied on expensive classes or tutors. I hadn't used any magic tricks or shortcuts. I had simply followed a simple plan, committed to doing a little bit each day, and trusted the process. The progress I made was proof that consistency really works. I also realized that I had learned more than just English in these 30 days. I had learned a valuable lesson about the power of persistence. It's easy to get discouraged when things don't happen as quickly as you want them to, but if you keep showing up and doing the work, success will come. It may take time, but it will happen. This lesson wasn't just about language learning, it was about life in general. The best part of all of this was that I didn't have to spend hours every day to see results. I only spent about 30 minutes a day, and by the end of 30 days, I could speak English confidently and understand others much better. This was a huge revelation for me. I realized that anyone could do it. You don't need to lock yourself in a room for hours every day studying endlessly. What you need is focus, consistency, and a willingness to keep going, even when it feels difficult. The truth is, learning a language doesn't have to be overwhelming or time-consuming. If you commit to just 30 minutes of practice every day, you can make tremendous progress. And the best part is that the more you practice, the easier it becomes. Soon, 30 minutes will feel like enough time to cover a lot of ground, and you'll find yourself speaking with ease. In the end, my 30-day journey wasn't just about learning English. It was about proving to myself that small, consistent actions can lead to big results. If I could do it, so can you. So don't wait. Start today and remember, 30 minutes a day is all you need to make incredible progress. Stay consistent, stay focused, and watch as your confidence grows. You've got this. So my dear students, here we are, at the end of this story. Now that you've heard all about my journey, my 30-day transformation, let me ask you something. Do you think this is something you can do too? Do you think that just like me, you can speak English confidently and feel comfortable understanding others? If I could do it, then yes, you can absolutely do it too. You don't need to wait for a perfect time or a special moment. The time to start is right now. Just think about where you are today compared to where you want to be. It might seem like a long road ahead, but let me tell you, the journey doesn't need to be complicated. The key is to start small, take one step at a time, and believe in yourself. That's all it takes. I've shared with you how I started from scratch, unsure of where to begin and feeling nervous about making mistakes. But I took one step after another, one day at a time. I didn't rush the process. I didn't overwhelm myself. I kept my goal simple, learn English in 30 days, and I stuck to my plan. With small actions every day, I was able to speak confidently, understand others, and feel proud of my progress. Now I want you to think about how far you can go in 30 days. Imagine waking up every day and committing just 30 minutes to practice. Think about how that little time over the course of a month could change everything. By the end of the month, you will feel more comfortable speaking, listening, and understanding English. You'll be amazed at how much you can accomplish with consistent effort. You see, learning English is not an overnight miracle. It's not about spending hours in a classroom or memorizing long lists of words. It's about finding a way to make English a part of your life every day. Just like I did, you can start with small, manageable steps. Don't worry about being perfect. Mistakes are part of the process. Every mistake is an opportunity to learn and grow. So, don't be afraid to speak, even if you're not sure you're saying everything perfectly. The more you practice, the better you'll get. Remember, no one becomes fluent in a language overnight. It's a process, and the most important part of that process is to keep going. One of the biggest lessons I learned is that small, consistent actions make all the difference. When I first started, it was hard to imagine how 30 minutes of practice a day could lead to significant results. It felt like such a small amount of time compared to the big goal I had set for myself. But the truth is, those small steps added up. Each day I was getting a little bit better. Each day I learned something new. And by the time the 30 days were over, I was amazed at how much I had accomplished. So I want to encourage you to focus on small actions. It doesn't matter if you can't dedicate hours each day. You don't need to study all day long. Just start with 30 minutes. That's all it takes. The key is to practice consistently. It's better to practice for 30 minutes every day than to study for hours one day and then do nothing for the rest of the week. Consistency will help you build momentum, and soon you'll see the results of your hard work. Throughout this journey, I learned something important that goes beyond just learning English. I realized that learning a language is not just about memorizing grammar, rules, or vocabulary. It's about developing a growth mindset, the belief that you can improve, learn, and grow no matter where you start. In the beginning, I was afraid of making mistakes, worried that I wasn't good enough. But as I kept practicing, I began to see that mistakes weren't the end. They were part of the journey. Every time I stumbled over a word, I didn't see it as a failure. I saw it as an opportunity to improve. And with that mindset, I was able to keep going day after day, building my skills and gaining confidence. Learning a language is much like learning any new skill in life. It requires patience, persistence, and the willingness to keep moving forward, even when it feels hard. And believe me, I know that sometimes it can feel tough. You may feel like you're not improving fast enough or that you're making too many mistakes. But I want you to know this. Growth takes time. The important thing is to keep practicing, stay focused on your goal, and trust that every step is bringing you closer to where you want to be. One thing that helped me stay motivated during my 30-day challenge was the simple idea that progress doesn't always happen instantly, but it always happens when you're consistent. There were days when I didn't feel like I was improving, or when I struggled to remember a word I had learned just the day before. But I kept going. I kept showing up, doing my 30 minutes of practice, and trusting the process. And over time, I started to see the fruits of my efforts. Learning English, or any new language, is a gradual process, and it's normal to feel frustrated sometimes. But remember, every bit of practice, every new word you learn, every sentence you say, every story you listen to, is contributing to your growth. Eventually, all of that hard work will add up, and you'll be amazed at how far you've come. What can you take away from this story? So what can you learn from my experience? What's the message I want to leave you with? First, believe in yourself. If I can learn English in just 30 days, so can you. There's no magic formula, no secret trick. The key to success is simple. Commit to consistent practice and take one step at a time. Second, embrace mistakes as part of the learning process. Don't be afraid to make errors. Every mistake is an opportunity to improve, and the more you practice, the fewer mistakes you'll make. So speak as much as you can, even if you're not perfect. The goal isn't perfection, the goal is progress. And finally, be patient with yourself. Learning English is a journey, not a race. You're not competing with anyone else. Your progress is your own, and it's okay to take your time. Celebrate every small victory, whether it's learning a new word, having your first conversation, or understanding a sentence in an English movie. All of these small wins add up over time and will help you reach your goal. Now that you've heard my story, I hope you feel inspired to start your own English learning journey. Remember, you don't have to wait for the perfect time. The perfect time is right now. Start small, be consistent, and trust the process. Take it one step at a time, and you'll be amazed at how far you can go in 30 days. Good luck on your journey. I believe in you, and I can't wait to see how much you accomplish. Let's start this journey together and make English a part of our everyday lives.